Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm co-founder of Property Elite and a chartered surveyor. And today I'm joined by Dan. And Dan is a professional coach and chartered surveyor. And we're going to be chatting today about team working and team building. So the relevance of this topic is that for the assessment of professional competence, all surveyors need to understand what team working looks like, and it's got particular relevance to the managing people competency for the senior professional assessment too. So Dan, I know that you're in Lake Como today, so tell me, Dan, what's the weather like?
Hi Rachel, it's not been a great start, to be honest. Been thunderstorms the last 5 hours. Hopefully you can pick up after our conversation, but happy to be here.
I'm pleased to say that back in the UK it is actually not raining at the moment, but no doubt it will have that in store for us later. So when we're talking about team working, then teamwork, can you kind of give me a feel for what teamwork is in reality? It's a term that we use all the time, but do we really know what it means?
Sure, I view teamwork as colleagues, as a task force, as a team working towards the same goal. They have the same vision in mind, and they're collectively not always in the same role. I think it's important to have different employees or members of the team offering different elements, but working towards the same vision and the same goal. And probably more than that, more than just the destination and the goal, but almost the way in which they get there. So I'm looking at some of the team dynamics models, such as the GRIP model. The I in GRIP actually starts into personal relationships, and that's really about kind of how you act. And a lot of really big a lot of companies have mission statements, and that's almost, yes, this is our objective, and it's important to clarify your goal in detail so you know what you're striving for, but also the values of the company and almost how you're going to get there. Because some say what's more important than what you have is almost kind of like who you are along the way. So almost along that journey of success, have you treated your colleagues respectfully? Have you honored your clients? I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of what we've been talking about over the last couple of discussions as well have come down to having a clear mission statement, and perhaps we should have a separate chat about that and goal setting another time. But in terms of team working then, what do you think a good supervisor or manager can do to foster a good team working environment?
To foster a good team working environment, I'd want the supervisor to encourage the traits we like to see in a team: respect, trust. Looking at the Lencioni model of there was a book in 2005 about the biggest obstacles to teamwork, and some of those is absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment. And I think those are some of some really big points which you ask of supervisor. How can you build trust in your team? Maybe it's a team building exercise. Maybe it's kind of just putting employees in the same department to get to know each other better and learn to kind of understand each other, and then maybe they trust each other. In terms of respect, can the supervisor create an environment where maybe there's benefits or incentives for kind of acting in a certain way or acting their values in line with the firm's values? So I'll be looking at trying to create that environment. And like I said, whether it's kind of how you kind of conduct yourself in the meetings, or maybe taking, the team out for a certain workshop, I'll look into those ways.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of actually sort of the characters that you ideally want to see in a team, is there any kind of any sort of theories about how to form good teams and what makes a good team?
Sure. So there's a theory. It's the Belbin theory, and it's essentially, the model is there's 9 or a finite number of behavioral characteristics the Dr. Belbin list 9. And essentially they feel that the model states that there's only really 9 characteristics that are effective in creating a high performance team.
Yeah.
Now, that's quite specific, and that theory was a number of years ago. But what I do agree with is that there are, it can help from an organizational point of view to have different team members in a certain role. I think to have that organization of almost having a certain employee or part of the team be responsible and hold himself accountable for a certain element of the task is only a positive thing. And I'm a big believer as well that you can't just have like-minded people in a team, and that almost supports this model. That there are different behavioral characteristics that are required to make a successful team. I think if you have 5 very smart, very successful people, but they all kind of have the same, say, hard skills and not really much variation, then there's not really much, you're not really branching out to succeed in other ways. So I think definitely having, different ideas, different opinions, different strengths in your team is vital, really.
Yeah. I mean, when you're kind of encouraging input and feedback from a team, what, how can you as a leader of that team encourage people to feedback and give you challenging responses without that becoming an area of conflict?
It's a very good question. I think as a leader, you absolutely want to keep, you mentioned the area of conflict, which was one of the parts of the pyramid in the Lencioni model. One reason why teams don't succeed is a fear of conflict. You almost, maybe an employee may be almost a bit too awkward to disagree with a team member or their supervisor, and they feel it's easier for harmony's sake to disagree, even though it's not what they believe. And I think we touched on it in a previous discussion about approachability, about if you're a supervisor, asking for your team's opinions and being open and say, please challenge me. I want you to challenge me. If and I think we've seen it, maybe if a supervisor sometimes says is kind of loosely in a certain tone, does anyone have any questions? And it's almost a tough atmosphere for someone to kind of break in and challenge. It's creating that kind of warm environment where people feel comfortable in themselves. And I think that's almost the most important aspect of a team, where people feel that they can be themselves, they can be open with their team, their colleagues, their supervisors, and that's when you get the best out of them.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I think that we talk about a lot when I'm mentoring people is motivation and how best to motivate your staff and your teams that you work with. Have you got any tips on that front? What works, what doesn't work for people in terms of motivation?
In terms of motivation, it's a big topic. It's an important one. I think there's this quote firstly I heard, which I think is quite important, more from a leader's perspective or a supervisor, and it's I can't remember who said it, but it's if you see someone as they are, it's what they will be. If you see someone as all they could be, they will become all that they should be. So what does that mean? It basically means, from the supervisor of leader's perspective, see the potential in someone, see what they could be capable of. And, if you provide that kind of confidence and kind of have that perspective when you speak to them, I think the employee, the team member will kind of sense your belief in where they could go, how high they could be, that, you feel that your leader, when you feel your leader has a plan for you, when you feel like you're like, your boss or manager believes in you, that you can go somewhere. I think that brings all sorts of motivation to almost prove them right, prove yourself right. There's definitely other, theories of motivation that I've been made aware of. The incentive theory. If a firm wants to give employees, for example, if you complete a certain task, you incentivize them for a promotion or for paid annual leave or for a bonus. I don't love that personally. I don't think it's sustainable. You can't always ask your employees to do a job if there's an additional bonus. I think the most powerful part of motivation is intrinsic rather than extrinsic. That's kind of almost having a burning desire within yourself to succeed rather than your company having to offer you
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the other thing from a corporate perspective is that you've got to follow through, haven't you? In the sense that if you do promise incentives, you've got to deliver them, which obviously has to be balanced with making the books balance. So, you know, it's a kind of difficult juggling act to be able to provide everything that everybody wants all the time. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And as we said, massive subject. So I'm going to have to close this down now, but we'll organise another chat on another day. Okay, thanks, Dan.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rachel. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.